Okay, so today I have the pleasure to be talking to Asli, who's coming to us out of Belize. How amazing is that? Asli, lovely to meet you. Can you tell us a bit about yourself? And the question I'm asking to everyone nowadays, what brings you joy?
Whew, I'll answer that second part last. So my name's Asli, and I am here in Belize with my husband and our two kids, Liban, who's 5, and Aurella, who's almost 2. And what brings me joy? What brings me joy is my kids. My kids bring me joy. Seeing their happy faces, the endless running around outside, and their just complete and utter excitement at life. That really just resets me every day without a fail.
Oh, that's beautiful. I love that. And so whereabouts in Belize are you? I know nothing about Belize, so this is going to be like a real information finding session. But yeah, describe Belize to me. Whereabouts in the country are you? And why did you choose that destination?
So Belize is, although it is a part of the Caribbean, technically it's mainland, south of Mexico, and the town that we're in is called Corozal, which is at the border with Mexico. So at the north. So if you have a look, whenever you get a chance to look at the map, it's kind of the barrier reef kind of curves in front of it. And this is one of the main reasons as to why we chose this particular spot. As we all know, and currently it's hurricane season in this whole region, and we've had a hurricane Eta passing not long ago, and it's devastated a lot of parts of not just the southern part of the country, but a lot of other countries around us. This was a part of our research in the beginning, because before we got here, we wanted to make sure that we could find a place where we could grow a lot of different foods, and which being the main aspect of our sustainability living. And the other part was, I am a love of water. Like, the ocean for me gives me life, and we had to find a balance between the jungle and the water. My husband's more of a forest jungle guy, and I am an ocean girl. So it's sort of, we had to find that balance, but at the same time, you know, the logistics of safety and what would work for us is what brought us here. And the other thing is, Belize is, I guess in some people's eyes, a third world country, as they would call it. And there's none of these chains. You don't have your McDonald's and your Starbucks and all of these guys. But the other thing as well is, because you don't have these big chains, there's a lot of things that you can't get hold of here. So, you know, that's a double-edged sword. But the other good thing about being here is that we're an hour to Mexico. An hour drive or 20 minutes by boat, and you're in Chetumal, and they have everything under the sun that we are, whether you're from the UK or the US, used to, as far as comforts go, or whatever. I mean, anything and everything that you could need.
Yeah, wow, that sounds amazing. And so the bit I'm still trying to understand is, like, which other countries were on your shortlist that you ended up in Belize? Because like, it's just so different. It's so, I mean, I love it, but it's an unusual one.
Well, for us, our journey started, I guess you can say, when we got married. Prior to getting married, we both traveled a fair share. I grew up in London and lived in Birmingham for a number of years, where I went to university, ended up staying, working, all the rest of it. And he was born in Yorkshire, and his family moved to the US when he was 12. And he spent the bulk of his life there, coming back to the UK a good 20 odd years later. So around the same time, we both came back to London, and that's when we met. But fast forward to us getting married, we both knew we'd love to travel. And, you know, knowing that we wanted to have a family, neither of us wanted to raise our children and family in general in a city. So we traveled a fair share, and when it came to getting married, we wanted to have a traditional wedding. I'm originally from Somalia. I was born in Somalia, although I grew up in London. So we decided, let's have a traditional wedding and fly out to Somalia. Now that's another story in terms of the conversations we had from both sides of the family. But we went ahead anyway, got married, and spent another 6 weeks on a honeymoon traveling around north of Somalia. And that was absolutely incredible. I mean, there was, not only is there a whole lot of opportunity in not just East Africa, but the continent of Africa as a whole, incredible amount of, opportunities. But we also saw a lot of need for different expertise and a lot of young people needing support in a lot of different ways, and came across a lot of orphans as well. So throughout this journey, we decided, you know what, we want to come back here and we want to set up shop and see how we fare. Now, the reason why this story sounds, a little bit more complicated than it would be is my husband's English and he's white. And we went to Somalia, East Africa, which is, a lot of people worry about, the civil war that took place for about 30 odd years and everything else, but it's changing rapidly at the moment. But we went anyway, packed up everything, went there, and just before we went, I found out I'm pregnant.
Oh, wow.
Tickets booked. We did, some fundraising and stuff for where we were going. Everything is all set. And then I remember one evening after we did a fundraising event, I was feeling really queasy that whole day, and something isn't right, Next day, lo and behold, after a few tests, I'm pregnant.
Wowzers.
Everybody's panicking. We're going to East Africa and I'm pregnant. Both of us decided we're still going ahead, because had we stayed, and you have a child, they're little, things always find a way to hold you back, and one thing leads to another. Oh, I'll wait until they're this age, or I'll wait until we do this. And we were like, you know what, bite the bullet, just go. At least the good thing is we can always come back home.
Exactly. Like a few weeks pregnant, that's like the best time to fly as a parent. That's like officially the best.
Get it out of the way. And we did. And, we had Liban there. Home birth, just me and him. The midwife didn't make it on time. Same thing happened with you as well. But, it was two of the most incredibly empowering, moments of my life. But home birth aside, we spent about 2 years there. And, did a lot of work. Frank's in construction design, so he did a lot of various sort of trade school type of thing where he was training young people to, learn different trades. Did some work with the UN, security works, various things. And at this time, we got to a point where, we loved the place, but we didn't feel like it was ready for us.
Interesting.
As a mixed couple.
Yeah. And so whereabouts in Somalia were you? When you say north, is that kind of like towards Puntland, or like whereabouts?
It's north of Puntland. It's technically called Somaliland.
Okay.
It's an autonomous region.
Yeah.
And, for me as a woman that grew up in the West, it didn't sit right, in terms of a lot of things that were expected of the way, a woman is supposed to be. Mm-hmm. And we were like, okay, well, maybe we need to press pause on this part of the journey. We've done these 2 years, been full on with work and, the little one, and it was quite intense. So we're like, okay, let's take a break, reset, recharge, figure out what it is that we want. Looking back on the different places that we've been to, places that we want to go see. So we go to Kenya, which is next door, camp out 4 months, do nothing but sit on the beach, having cocktails and eating and just completely bumming out. Day trips, weekend trips to various different parts of the country. Kenya's incredible. There's so much, variety. And it was this time that we decided, okay, so what's the next step? We're going to go home, still see family and friends that haven't met our baby yet. But our end goal has never been London. So let's sit down and figure out what it is that we want to do. And it was around this time that Frank started getting into investments a bit more. So following various different people's journeys and, you know, looking at making a breakdown as to different places that we've been. What did we like about it? What didn't we like? What do we want? Because having left Somaliland now, we figured we know some of the things that we don't want, which has led to some of the things that we do definitely want out of our lives, what we are not willing to compromise on. And that's when the list was born, as to ranking each country 1 to 10. So on that list, I think if you've read the blog article Why Belize on our blog Decentralized Life, it was everything from security, community, family friendly, you know, environment. And being a mixed couple, we needed to make sure that it had to be a place that could accommodate both of us to as best as it can anyway. In this world, it's, I mean, he's a white man and I'm a black woman. No matter where we go, somebody is not going to be 100% welcome. It's the reality. That's the reality that we live in. So we were like, okay, well, what kind of middle ground can we find? And as we go through the list, I mean, we had Kenya, which was amazing, Tanzania, which was incredible. And we knew we definitely are coming back to East Africa, but maybe we just need to give it a bit of time. But the other thing is, well, why limit ourselves? Why limit ourselves to one home in one country? Because the way the world is going, each government is kind of limiting people more and more and restricting people more and more, whether it comes to their finances or, you know, just your general day-to-day life with everything that's going on this year. I mean, couldn't have predicted that save our lives, but we're here. You know, for us was like, well, can we try to build a life where, one, we don't ever need to take a holiday from. Our day-to-day life will be a holiday, and work, but a holiday nonetheless. So have more than one home, have more than one place which we call home. And that's where the concept of decentralized life came about. So how do we manage our finances? Because that's the key aspect that always holds you back. And I'm sure a lot of people, including yourself, can relate in that I need to have X, Y, Z to be able to do this. So kind of getting our heads together in terms of how do we decentralize our finances? How do we decentralize ourselves in our physical, on a physical level? You know, we know we want to build a sustainable life. But sustainability isn't just about, you know, having off-grid homes, solar panels, wind power, you know, rainwater catch. It's not just that, it's just one element of it. But your finances are just as important if you're going to say you want a, you know, sustainable life. So that's when we started to explore those few months in Kenya, the idea of where is where. And I remember we were in a place called Diani, which is just off the coast of Mombasa. It's one of my favorite places in the world to this day. You know, I'm absolutely in love with that place. And we were there, and I remember reading this article of different places for, you know, retired communities and families. And so as I'm scrolling through this list of different, you know, cities and countries, Corozal pops up. I'm reading, I was like, I know this one. You know, I'm reading through it and I'm like, okay, let's explore this some more. And, you know, we went with it as we were going, came to visit, you know, liked the place, but went back to the UK and both working. And it's such a blessing to have my mum in London, where both of us were working full time, little guys with my mum, you know, practically the whole day. We got a place nearby her house. So whichever one of us gets back from work first, picks him up, and some food from her mum, being a typical grandma, you know, and we go home. And that enabled us, that time in London, we set ourselves a set amount to save to make sure that we can do the living trial here. Because yeah, it's one thing, obviously, being on holiday, which, you know, can be quite deceiving. A lot of people, I think, fall in love with the place through having gone there on holiday multiple times. It doesn't necessarily just have to be one time, but the reality of being a tourist and living in that place amongst the community with the locals is a completely different reality. People see you
Yeah,
different. When
for
you're a tourist,
sure.
you're a tourist. So we set ourselves a timeline on when to come back here, set a budget on how much we needed to save to spend well, we set ourselves 6 months to stay here, to rent a small place, live as simply as we possibly could, look around for buying a piece of land, and just kind of get our heads around what it is to actually live here. One of the other main bonuses for us when we thought of this side of the world was Belize is the only English-speaking country in Central America. So that makes life a little bit easier because I don't speak Spanish and Frank's Spanish is quite limited. And it's a Commonwealth country using English law. So that's something that we understood, we're, you know, familiar with. So it's like, okay, the transition is not going to be as hard from a logistical perspective. But yeah, so that's the long end of how we ended up here.
Yeah, and so I'm interested in kind of like the nitty-gritty practicalities. So the last time I moved abroad, it was as part of a couple, and it can be your list of what you needed and what his list of what he needed. Were they the same, and how did you navigate that, the potential duality of that? Because what I'm loving about this conversation with you is that up until now, pretty much everyone I've spoken to has been single, I think. Oh, definitely no kids. Whereas when you're a couple and with kids, there are many more layers. So how did you two navigate that, or were you both just on the same page and it was just a formality that you both wanted to go to the same place?
The thing with us is, and everybody that knows us will tell you this, me and Frank are almost like day and night. We're very different. He is, you know, very forward, super ambitious. He wants to do so many things on such a grand scale. And myself is more like, well, let's just wheel it back a little bit. Let's, you know, let's slow down. Let's take a deep breath. Let's think about this, you know. And but the one thing that we both definitely agree on, and which has helped us navigate the day-to-day life, is that we both know what we want for ourselves and our kids.
Mm-hmm.
And ultimately, what makes us both work, despite the fact that we're so different, is that I am focused on my growth and our growth as a family, as is he. So will whatever next step that we're doing enable us to be better people, not for ourselves only, but for each other? Is this going to work? Because that's the thing with marriage as well, because traveling and putting yourself into these intense situations and trying to navigate them with your two different perceptions of every situation will create you know, quite a few difficult conversations, and it's a given. You're sharing your life with somebody and you both want to do things, and you're looking at things from two different ways, but you're still going to the same direction.
Mm-hmm.
But with us, it's just been knowing how we want to raise our kids, you know, and what's the end goal. And I think one of the blessings, and we were talking about this the other night, and normally at the end of each night when we put the kids to bed, we sit on the porch, just sort of catching up, resetting off the day with ourselves for about an hour or so. And we were just saying how one of the things that actually helps us is that we are both so busy that we don't even have time to argue or disagree on anything. Just like, nobody has time for that. But it's the knowing what the end goal is for both of us. That always helps. And knowing that it's the sustainability in every sense of the word. We want to raise happy, healthy children, not just physically, but spiritually and emotionally. And to do that, they need to be able to run free. They need to be able to just be their most authentic selves. It doesn't have to mirror the way we were raised, whether we agree with some parts of it or not. And if we disagree, it's fine. we will agree to disagree, but on as long as we can both agree on the bigger picture, then that's fine, because we're both really tired at the end of each day. And the one thing that, you know, we, even though, you know, on a logical level that we've left our family and friends behind in another country, and it's just us two little people, 24/7, it's full on. Like, it's full on, and they're both at that stage where they're full of energy, and they, you know, they do play on their own, but then they're both kind of tugging at the same thing, and you'll always be like, this one, get down, or you put this down, or leave your sister, or don't take this from your brother. It's on. It's always, you're always on as a parent. And we don't have the support system of our family and friends, even though we've had family visits. You know, it's a couple of weeks at a time, or maybe a month or so at a time. But that's hard, and that takes a lot out of you, you know. But to get through that, I think you need to both be on the same page. And I'm just grateful that we both are, and knowing what we want at all times. And the rest is just details. As long as, you know, you both respect the fact that it's just little details and nothing's ever personal, then it's okay.
Yeah, no, I love that. That's beautiful. And so, in terms of describe your day today. What are you actually doing in Belize? What's your setup?
Day to day. Days are different. I'm just going to go through this week to give you a general.
What's the general proposition of what you're doing in Belize?
The general proposition is, we got a piece of land. On one corner, we're building a home, which is a temporary home for us physically right now, made out of recycled wood. So it's a small home, which will then, come next year, will be for our family and friends that visit. So it's going to be the guest house. On the other end, we will be having a round earth house. I don't know if you
have ever come across this concept. Someone just sent me something about earth houses today. They look great.
Oh, no,
how many domes are you going to have?
We are actually doing ours very modern. If you look at my my Instagram page, somewhere along the lines, we've got some of the drawings that we have done a few years ago. It's not going to be domes. It's going to be we're going to have a green roof. So it's going to be a living roof up top, and the solar on the side. So it's very sleek, very sort of clean, modern lines with the round earth. So it's not a typical dome-ish earth home type. So slightly different. But yeah, so we're doing that. The idea is, for once we're gone and not here anymore, these two buildings can decompose and go back to the earth, and we haven't left a single print. So that's the aspect of the buildings. And then we did a well, was it last week or the week before, or what it was, we had a well dug. We'll be doing rainwater catchment. We'll have the solar coming in once we got the house up and running, vegetable garden, and then we're doing trees all around the area. And the other thing as well being that we've had a lot of people that have inquired about this way of life, and with homeschooling being such a big movement at the moment, I think a lot of people have asked us about what it is that we're doing with our kids, because Liwan's 5 now, and even though we started the education a while ago, we're not sending him to school. We're life schooling him, and that's another part that I explain in the blog, briefly going into why we chose this way of educating our children. But we have a few families, some single mothers and some couples with kids that have a similar vision for their life, that want to come and, you know, coexist in a community alongside people like ourselves. So the idea going forward now then is to have a few smaller homes of like-minded families and build this community, build our tribe, essentially. You know, because there's a lot of people that want to do what we're doing right now, but the first step is hard, and they don't quite know where to start, and this is why a lot of the questions and inquiries are coming to us, because I think like you were saying in the beginning, that a lot of single people, or not necessarily single, but on their own, are doing this, traveling abroad, relocating to the Caribbean, and everything seems all nice and shiny. They're bumming on the beach, and we don't have the same luxury. You're on a child's time, so it's a little different. So for parents, it's like, well, I want to live this life, but I don't know where to begin. How do I navigate this? And it's hard when, especially for somebody who's maybe a single mother or a single father, managing the kids as well as doing if you want to do a self-build, which we're doing, or having support with doing it. Well, how do you balance the childcare and then just life?
Yeah.
It's a lot, so we're obviously working towards creating a community for that as well. But I guess the long-term goal is to have this community here in Belize, and then have another one in East Africa, depending on where we settle. And we just have a few different homes in different countries. And our finances, of course, going alongside with that as well.
I love that. And so do you have like a time scale for like the community building aspects of it? Like when would you like to welcome your first family?
We have actually 2 families that are coming to visit end of next year, provisionally. With everything going on in the world at the moment, we're not really quite 100% sure the way things are panning out. However, we've got 2 families come in to visit, see how they feel. Because for me, the one thing I always tell everybody, and this is not just strictly Belize or the Caribbean for that matter, when you're looking to relocate, always do a trial run. Live in whatever is the place that you're going to for a minimum of 6 to 9 months. If you can do a year, great, but never less than 6 months. Live there. Go to the supermarkets, go to the farmers markets, mingle with the local community. If you've got kids and you're sending them to school, go see the school. Talk to your neighbors and get a feel for the place. And that's what I tell everybody that contacts us that wants to come with. And at the moment, I'm just like, well, guys, we're still doing this part, so just bear with us a little bit. I want us to be into our home first, even though we've got the plans for the different casitas, so to speak, and smaller bits for the families. So next year, there will be more and more people rolling in on a trial basis, because I wouldn't want anybody to kind of get ahead of themselves a little bit without making sure that they set their finances in line, and all the other bits that they need to before they make the jump. Because as much as I am saying, you do need to bite the bullet and really just go, don't be stuck. That's the hardest. The first step is always the hardest. But at the same time, follow your heart, but take your head along with you. Like, it's that things aren't always as shiny and as pretty as they physically look on the pictures in the Caribbean. There's a lot of technicalities that you have to understand, and the only way to understand it is to live it.
Yeah, no, definitely. It's kind of that thing, wherever you go, there you are. There's some things that you might think you're escaping, but actually perhaps it's internal, perhaps it's often more complicated. But say for someone who doesn't have kids, or for someone whose just life is generally unplugged and is thinking, I hadn't thought of Belize as a CARICOM place to move to. How would you describe it? What's the appeal of Belize?
I think Belize, one of our favorite things, without a question of doubt, is the mixture of communities here. You have a group of people called mestizos, which are Mayan descendants that are mixed with the Spaniards. You have Creole, a large group of Creole community here. You have the Garifuna, which are, they were shipwrecked on their way on a slave ship, and they were welcome on board. This is the most limited explanation. I am sorry if I am offending anybody that is Garifuna, but it is National Garifuna Day in this country on the 19th.
Nice.
So they're absolutely beautiful community. But even though such a tiny country, there's such a mixture of people. And I think one of my favorite parts is, even though I've traveled all over the world, I remember one of the first times I came here, I have never felt more welcome as a Black woman in any country. And this is from someone who's traveled a lot of places, including the continent of Africa, which is, you know, my home. So it's one of my favorite things is the people. People are very kind and welcoming, and it, even though it has its challenges in terms of technicalities, people are nice, like just genuinely nice people, you know, and it's not often you see that. And life is a lot more laid back and not as rushed. You know, you can go about with your day-to-day life like it's nothing. Every weekend people are by the water and they have a reason to celebrate every single time without a fail, you know. Food's very varied here, and you can see the influences of different cultures. So yeah, that for me, I think whether you're single or, you know, you have a family, and there's about over 400 keys in this country, a lot of little islands outside, even though we decided to settle mainland, there's so many different islands. And the Barrier Reef is the second largest reef in the world. But if you're going to talk about it on a technicality basis, the Great Barrier Reef isn't technically alive anymore because it's been ruined, whereas this one is. You know, the waters are absolutely breathtaking, and there's so much variety to see. It's not often you find a country where you have these turquoise, incredible, beautiful waters, and then you have this dense jungle, and you have the bush, and everything within such a small, tiny, you know, little space. It's, the variety is incredible, and I think a lot of people would find what they would like here.
Love it. And so in terms of the challenges, like, I think it's really honest to paint as balanced a picture as possible as to what the relocation, the settling process can be like. What are some of the challenges that you've unexpectedly encountered in your time in Belize?
For us, some of the challenges has been the timeline in which paperwork gets processed. There's, you know, people in offices run on a certain time, and things get done when they get done, sort of a very relaxed island fever type of way. There's no rush, you know. And when you're picking up forms and you're filling in various things, the person in the office will give you the information, which is great. But then you fill it in, you come back, and I was like, oh, there's another thing. You're like, do you mind, while I'm here, give me everything I need, please? You know, but, and the speed and everything else. But the reality is, what we're used to from where we're from is that chop, 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 things are done. You've got this information, blah, blah, blah. But people run on a different timeline here. So even though that is a frustration, we've come to respect and appreciate that there is nothing to rush to or from, for that matter. Things get done.
Very good. You're good. The bureaucracy drives me crazy. Like, I meditate, I breathe, I like everything, but no, it drives my husband, especially when you have to drive. It's not like you fill it in online and it gets sent back. You drive there, you queue, you wait, and then you have to do it all over again.
I think it's a general overall Caribbean thing, and it drives my husband absolutely nuts, because he's the type of person where when he wants to do something, it's just kind of like and I'm just like, you know what, let's just take time. Just take time. The number of, I mean, I don't even know how many times I say this. Just take time, okay? It will get done. Let's just breathe it out. You know, it can be frustrating, but the reality is we're not where we were. And as a person who's relocated, whether you want to call them immigrant or expat, whatever, the reality is you're on somebody else's home turf. And respect their way of doing things, even if it doesn't make sense to you.
You're good. I can accept it. I don't know if I can respect it. I accept it, and I also accept that me getting irritated and doing nothing other than raise my blood pressure. But I do live in hope that one day everything will be digitized and efficient. I mean, Grenada's beginning to do it. You can now get your driving license online instead of having to get to the fire station and queue to, so, you know, progress is in the works.
There is progress being made. You know,
also, COVID as well. COVID is forcing islands to kind of rethink things, because this whole like spend 3 hours in a queue to get something done, we could do it online. But yeah, I think philosophically accepting, letting go of things and holding less onto the view of how things work in back home, definitely that's important. But also there's scope for improvement. There's a lot.
Oh, definitely, without a shadow of doubt. I mean, I disagree with that at all. There is a lot of room for improvement. But for me, I think it is just genuinely respecting, you know, where you are and the people, because I think one of the issues that we found here is there's a large American expat community, and a fair amount of Canadians, but there's not as many Europeans. We barely meet any Europeans. There's a few Brits here, more so through, you know, past connections, because this is it used to be a British colony. It used to be called British Honduras until independence. So there are a few people. And the thing with a lot of different people is that they come and they live in like-minded expat communities. I mean, it's all well and good finding, you know, people that are like-minded, but then not, you know, living with the people of the land, essentially, and expecting things to be done the way they were where you're from. Which, well, if you liked it so much, why'd you leave?
Yeah.
I mean, I know it sounds a bit not the nicest way of putting it, but like, if you don't like it, don't bring it with you. Like, come on, you know.
Yeah, you do have to learn how to take the rough with the smooth. I think, I think, and everyone has their thing, don't you? Like some people, it's the service drives them crazy, but other people, it's the driving or whatever. And I think, as long as you know there's going to be something that's going to drive you crazy initially, and you just need to learn how to adapt. Or to offer, if there's scope, to lovingly offer advice that can actually be implemented, you know, come up with solutions as well, or alternatives. But yeah, that's the thing I always, it's interesting, because my parents are Grenadian and I have this Canadian citizenship, so I feel like I have a legitimate right to criticize. But my friends who were born there, when I say stuff, they're like, why are you criticizing? So yeah, I do know I need to like bite my tongue, but yeah, no, it's interesting. I think across all the islands, it's a thing.
Generally, yes.
Yeah, and so what else was I going to ask you? In terms of your children, how have they adapted, and how do you think traveling with children or relocating with children has differed from the first time when you relocated with just a child in your tummy? What's the difference?
It's, oh gosh, it's day and night. I mean, when it was just me and Frank traveling around by ourselves, I mean, your load's a lot lighter. You run quicker because you're not chasing a shoe or a sandal, or, you know, I mean, walking out the door with a child, even if you're going to Tesco or Sainsbury's, any parent I know would relate, you know, when I say this. It's a mission. And then you do this across continents. It amplifies a little bit. But I think the best thing about traveling with kids is how easily adaptable they are. They adapt a lot quicker than us adults, you know, and the love of travel sets in quite easily. I mean, for us, we can tell the most through Liban, who's our 5-year-old. He's the one that's traveled with us the most. Whereas Aurella was born here in Belize, actually. Decided to do our 6 months run when I was 7 months pregnant, actually. We came here and we had her here. So she hasn't traveled as much, but depending on the age group, I think you need to bear in mind the entertainment level. As long as you can, I guess, maneuver around that. Honestly, whether you're flying a 10-hour flight across wherever, or you're on a car drive from, I don't know, one end of London to the other end, it doesn't matter. The logistics and kids' attention span and emotions, it's all one and the same. And I genuinely don't think that people should be disheartened or think it's a lot harder to travel just because you've got kids. It's really not. place.
No,
It's the
definitely.
fear that's worse than the actual reality.
Yeah, I think there's two things. I think there's one, the traveling, and I definitely think between the ages of 8 months to 8 to 4, that's probably like the worst window to travel, just because yeah, you can't guarantee that they'll sit still or be able to self-entertain. But once you're there, it's another, I think, yeah, the horror of a potential flight shouldn't put anyone off moving. But a lot of parents, a lot of people, once they, and I can tell that you obviously haven't done this, but a lot of people, as soon as they have kids, they feel there's a responsibility to be like stable and certain, and like, this is what you're required to do. You need to get into a good
Yeah.
school in the catchment area and blah 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 until university. Have you, I mean, I know you're in a very different position, but what would you say to someone who's kind of on that route, feeling the call to do something different, but feeling that's just so irresponsible? How could I do that to my family? How could I do that to my kids? What would you say?
I say that, there's a lot of re-education that we need to encounter ourselves as parents. Every parent always wants what's best for their child at heart, no matter which way you go or whatever philosophy you follow or whatever educational route you're going. Ultimately, we want what's best for our children. But the information that we receive or we have received throughout our lives is what then dictates the life that we set out for them. And the key thing for us has always been, and me more so than anything else, I don't want to raise a child that has to learn to grow out of the childhood that they've been through. I don't want a child that has to relearn or reset. But that's, I guess, the same as every other parent. They try to do the best by their child. But for somebody who is worried about the stability or, doing the right thing and living a structured life, I think it's a matter of perception. I mean, this way of life is, as much as we are super busy, it is structured. And for us, it's the end goal of raising well-rounded, emotionally intelligent people, and to do so, you need to look at raising your child from a holistic approach. Education isn't just schooling. School is a part of education. So then the question comes to be, well, how do I guess, stay safe and do this life? But then this life, in all honesty, I think is just the foundation of us as humans. I think, we've, a lot of people anyway, I know, like myself, have been raised in a city and we think that's normal. But being on the subway, underground, whatever, 9 to 5, running daylight savings, that's not normal human nature. I'm just saying, if you're talking about safety and stability, look at what's out there. Look at what's out there. There are ways of educating your child, schooling them, achieving exactly what you would achieve now by, say, putting them through different secondary schools and college and whatever's, while still being independent, while still being able to build a sustainable life. The reality is it's a lot cheaper to live in places like this with your mental health and emotions intact than it is living in London. Like, one example is the simplest things for us. We had our monthly expenses were at one point before we left about just shy of 4K a month, give or take. Now, this is before our daughter came along. It was just me, Frank, and Liban, just the three of us. Nothing extraordinary. We lived in a nice 2-story house in Surrey. So bills and rent and just generally with the car and blah, blah, blah. Almost 4K. That's a lot of money. And we weren't even living extravagant. Like, it was just a very straightforward life. Now, the 6 months that we were here, doing practically nothing, living off our savings, we were spending about shy of a grand a month.
Wow.
Rent, everything included. And we're doing a daily walk by the water.
That's amazing.
And the emotional wellness and the mental health payout is so much greater. So then you ask yourself, well, what is stability? What is safety? What, what are we setting up our children to value?
Yeah.
Work ethic is important, and this is what we instill in our child. Knowledge is very important, for us and our children, and that's what we're trying to instill. But that doesn't have to come from my child sitting at a desk for however many hours a day. However, that works for some kids and some people because we all learn differently. Just because I don't think that sitting at a desk for X amount of hours doesn't work, doesn't mean that it won't work for you, because that might be something that you thrive on, which is great. But for me, it's just give your child a chance. Give them a chance. Expose them to a lot of things and then go with it. Yeah. Because if we put them in one box, then we're not really doing them a favor.
Yeah, no, totally. I couldn't agree more. And so in terms of the key advice, as someone who's lived in a number of different places across the world, what 3 key pieces of advice would you give to someone or a couple thinking about moving in the next 6 months? So what 3 bits of wisdom would you share?
6 months. That's quite. I hope you've done your research. I think that's one of the most important thing is knowing what you want and doing the research to follow it. Do as much due diligence as you possibly can. Research. There's literally not enough information that you can get, because even when you get to the place you are, you're still going to learn heaps. But you'll rather have learned as much as you can and started the journey that way than not knowing much and then having to undo a lot. The second thing is sit down and really look at your finances. Really look at your finances as to what is your current incoming, what is your current outgoing. Are you saving? Do you have an emergency fund? Have you thought about investments? Because life isn't just getting and spending. It doesn't necessarily just have to be that way. You don't always have to exchange your sweat for money, and to create, not just to be rich, but you need to be thinking about creating wealth, generational wealth, something that you can pass on to your kids. And then hopefully theirs, and so on and so forth. And that comes by knowledge and educating yourself on how can you make money work for you as opposed to the other way around. Like generally get your head around money, because that's something that a lot of us haven't learned in school. I know when I went to school, I mean, how much finances did I really learn? I had to do that as I grew up, and I had to learn about what credit cards are and interest rates and blah, 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 all these different things. Why can't we teach that now early on to our kids, so that it's not mind-boggling as time goes on? So get your head around your finances, make a budget, have an emergency fund, look into different ways of making your money work for you. So, because finance is a big part of relocating and doing anything. And the other thing I would say is just breathe. Just breathe. No matter what happens, everything is going to be okay. As long as you are doing right by yourself, you follow your heart, no matter what happens, it's going to be okay. There are people out there that are more than willing to help.
No, that's perfect. I think that's really amazing advice. And so if people want to find out more about you, kind of figure out how to get to Belize, understand the strategies that your family has used in terms of relocating, what's the best way for people to reach out and get in touch?
The best way would be to go to our blog, which is decentralizedlife.com. On there, we record our journey in general, from all things sustainability and growing your own food, and the building, like sort of. So we have a post on the general idea of how we're putting the house together, and then there's the other section of it, which is quite a big part of the blog itself, is the decentralized portfolio and decentralized investor, which we discuss a lot on. I'll focus a lot on financial intelligence, financial literacy in different ways, and people to get their head around, finances in general, and how to help not only educate yourself, but educate your kids as well. And learning about various investments, whether it's, I don't know, in IT or gold, minerals, that sort of thing. Just a lot of things that we cover in terms of finances, because that's a big concept to get your head around. So, but contact us and read the blogs and let me know what you think. I mean, I'm always happy to help, and I know how tough the journey is when you're traveling with a family, and I know the doubts that can come when you decide to take that step. So I'm more than happy to always advise where I can, and if you want to come and visit us, by all means, we'll always break down what we have, and our vegetable garden is up and running, the tree nursery is going, so there's organic food to be picked and ate and shared, so yeah.
Oh, it sounds amazing. Literally the soundtrack of your life, the like birds whistling, the people talking outside the fan, like that's sold. I'm almost sold on that alone to like come out and visit. But no, I really appreciate you taking the time to talk to me, especially when I know how busy your days are at the moment. But yeah, like the gems that you shared are super, super useful. And it sounds like your blog is just like a real treasure trove of advice. So yeah, highly appreciate you taking the time out, and I look forward to following your progress. And yeah, let's definitely keep in touch.
Yes, and thank you for having me. Thank you. I think I absolutely love what you're doing. I think it's nice that you've created a space where people can, do their research and get their heads around more. And I, like I said to you when we first spoke, I wish I'd come across your platform when I was doing my research, because it is nice to actually hear it from people that are either living it or looking, for this way in life. So thank you for having me.
No, it's a pleasure. It's a pleasure to be able to profile people who look like us, who are making moves to show that it can be done. So yeah, exciting. Thank you.